The idea of a high-speed rail link between Australia's big East Coast cities has raised its head again. The Federal Minister for Infrastructure, Anthony Albanese, is today releasing the first stage of research into the viability of very fast trains. Of course, we have been here before. This is the third time high-speed rail has been investigated, and each time it's been thwarted by cost. It was first proposed nearly 30 years ago in 1984. John Brown was the then Federal Tourism Minister. He was and is a big supporter of very fast trains, and he joins me now in the studio. John Brown, good to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Pleasure, Ross.
Do you think this time will be any different? Will high-speed rail become a reality?
God, I hope so. It's been such a frustrating experience. I mean, we have a train system which is basically Dickensian. 14 hours from Brisbane to Sydney is ridiculous. And that's despite the fact that we've got a rotten highway. I mean, 60 years after the war, we haven't even got a decent highway to Brisbane. Now, all the imagination and excitement has gone out of government in Australia. I mean, however did we build the Harbour Bridge in the Depression? How did we build Central Railway and the Underground Railway? How did we build the Snowy Mountain Scheme? The people of Australia at the minute are depressed for God knows what reason, and they need some excitement in their life. I mean, every tin pot country in Asia and Europe has got a very fast train, and we've got trains that belonged 2 centuries ago.
Well, the Infrastructure Minister, Anthony Albanese, has been talking at the launch this morning of the first stage of research into this latest attempt to get very fast trains up and running. Let's hear from him.
Well, look, this is a visionary project, and I'm in politics to make a difference. There's no doubt that this would make an enormous difference to the way that the Australian economy functions, to the way that our productivity occurs, to the way that we reduce our climate change emissions, and to the way that our regions develop.
Anthony Albanese there. So, John Brown, is this just the government's, do you fear, fulfilling an election commitment to the Greens?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I mean, look at the reasons for say, for instance, Sydney to Canberra, which should be the first stage. There are 40 flights out of Sydney to Canberra daily. Take 40 flights out of Sydney, and it means you can put off the position of a new airport quite considerably. All those lovely suburbs or lovely little towns down the Southern Highlands are now subject to the M5. It's a parking area every day as they drive to Sydney. If you had a decent train, they would become lovely dormitory suburbs. Would be an enormous improvement in the way that Sydney runs if you had people living down there commuting to Sydney in a very fast train. Look, Roz, it's got to happen. We've broached the subject before. I remember being lampooned 30 years ago, and I thought about it.
Well, that's right. You were in the Hawke government when this was first mooted, and it was pulled down to cost. You were a big supporter then, as you are now. It all comes down to cost. That's the reason subsequent attempts haven't happened. What is the argument for persuading people that it should happen when it comes to money?
Well, other little countries can do it. We're probably one of the wealthiest countries on earth, with the best living standard. And why shouldn't we be up with the rest of the world in providing decent transport?
Other countries are smaller and they have the high density population that we simply don't. Geographically, it's harder for us.
Oh, look, Sydney's a major city by anybody's estimation. There's nearly 5 million people living here. And from here to Canberra it wouldn't take very long, half an hour to our national capital. It would make Canberra a tourist thing. It would make all those places in the Southern Highlands dormitory suburbs. It would relieve all that pressure on the M5, all those dreadful emissions that are coming out every day from thousands of cars travelling that terrible distance. It would take 40 planes off Mascot every day. Everything in its favour except the capacity to do it. Now, Albanese said then that he's in government to make things happen, and I'm sure that's correct. He's the brightest bloke there, and the quicker that the government gets behind him and gives him the strength to do it, the better.
John Brown, great to see you. Thank you.
Pleasure.